Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm Follygon, and I had mentioned in the last episode that we would be taking a look at the hair a little bit more, but kind of after reviewing the footage and kind of looking through what I was doing, it's mainly the same processes that I was using in the last video, so instead of boring you with the same exact stuff, I thought we would just kind of fast forward this little beginning part. I still want to show you guys everything. I don't want to cut any of the footage, but at the same time, I don't want to bore you with just showing you the same thing over and over and over again. So I fast forward through this little part of working on the hair here in the beginning. My main kind of mental process as I'm working on this is to just get an even spread. You'll notice that all the hair tubes are about the exact same size because I duplicate a lot of them, but that's totally okay. I'll probably go back through later and inflate a bunch of them and deflate a bunch of the other ones just to get some size variation, and then we can start creating some actual secondary forms on those. But we'll talk about all that later. For now, we're going to go ahead and start working on the breasts. I'm just using an insert multi-mesh brush, or the insert sphere brush if you're on the past version of ZBrush. Unfortunately, they got rid of that brush and now it's just the insert multi-mesh. You might be able to import it back over, and I might even do that. I'm just kind of messing with my shelf settings so that I can get those over to the side. That's up in your preferences where you saw me go. So I'm just using an insert multi-mesh brush, like I said, throwing on a sphere onto my chest piece, which I duplicated. From there, I can delete that extra piece or just do a split hidden operation, which you've seen me do in the past. And this is essentially just a real quick and easy way of creating breasts. Look at reference, try to get the placement right. Breasts are very simple, but they're difficult to make look good. And in my opinion, less is definitely more here in terms of shape and working on just the overall character of the breast. Look at some really good 2D drawing references because a lot of people will show you how the just teardrop shape of the breast when you're drawing the line art works out really well, and kind of trying to carry that idea into a 3D space has been very effective for me as well, and you'll see me kind of start to do that here. Sometimes I like to flatten them up against the chest a little bit, which I think is what I'm attempting to do, just a little bit to give them that squashed kind of weighted gravity feeling. So take gravity into account. They're essentially just bags of fat on your chest. Sorry, ladies. But yeah, so just starting with that sphere shape, and then I pull that top middle corner up into the middle. Sometimes what I like to do is once I have that really good basic sphere shape in place, the size and everything else, I'll duplicate my sphere and work on a second one, just so that if I mess up or something happens, I can always roll back to that most basic shape. Sometimes I combine some stuff. I didn't do that here, but maybe in a later video I'll go more in detail about some of this stuff. So as I start to work on the breast here, of course I notice other problem areas in my chest. Kind of just the warbliness of it is what I call it. Essentially, it's not a super clean shape. I like to keep stuff super clean most of the time. I start off working really dirty, which you've probably seen many a time before, and then from there I kind of start to really refine all my shapes, which is why looking at the breasts here, you can just see that it's a really clean spherical teardrop shape that we're kind of creating. Nothing complicated. I don't have millions of polygons here. It's just super simple. Hopefully I have even my lowest subdiv. Sometimes even if I don't have that, I'll just Z-remesh it as low as humanly possible just to get that most basic shape, and I'll probably eventually do that. But what you're going to see me do here is once I kind of get this to a place where I like, eventually I won't do it right now, but eventually I will kind of dynamesh these into the body, and that can be a really good way to start cleaning up that transition. But what I just did there was I took the breasts just using my transpose tool, or you can use the new Gizmo 3D tool, and I slid them back into the body, kind of creating that separation there. If you do dynamesh them into the body, if you do combine these parts and pieces, just do be aware that you won't be able to get that hard kind of transition that you get underneath the breast. So I'm just kind of undoing and trying a bunch of different things to kind of figure out what I like, what I don't like, and then go from there. But I think we're at a pretty good place for here. I'll do maybe a little bit more adjusting to the shape just to kind of get them in place. But other than that, yeah, we can start working more on the body. We can start working on these arms. I already have the deltoid part, which I like to keep on the arm most of the time. Sometimes it's nice to kind of throw that on the body and keep that there. But we'll keep working here and see what else we can do with this body. Mainly I'm just going to use my clay tubes brush to kind of build up form for muscle. From there I like to use a combination of a few brushes, but mainly it's just the clay tubes, the trim brush, the trim dynamic, you can see me using here. And that's just a really good brush for kind of knocking down or even building up form. But it's really helpful for creating these kind of transitions, which I'm trying to get back here for the spine of the scapula. And it's obviously exaggerated. It doesn't go that far back towards the spine. You can look up some references of backs or some skeletons, or even the in ZBrush, if you go up to your spotlight button in the top left, there's a tool in there made by Ryan Kingslion, female anatomy model. And it's a huge help for this kind of thing if you're working on anatomy. Go check it out. It's got every bone in the body in there, a bunch of muscles, a bunch of structure, and I use it in my How to Sculpt a Stylized Female Head YouTube series that you can find. Hopefully there's a link in the top right if I remember to do that. I actually really quick go back to the hair just because I get a little distracted by seeing the subtool of the big clump of hair that I have, and I pretty much just get rid of it later. I'll delete it permanently, and that's just because I'm not really gonna need it or use it later. But going back to the body, as I jump around a lot, I do get distracted, but it is a good idea to kind of keep your hand moving, which I've mentioned many a time before. But here's the technique that I was talking about before, where I merge and dynamesh the breasts and the body together. I went ahead and did it with the arms as well, just because I want to start cleaning up this transition for the arms, going from the torso out to the deltoids. So this is just a nice way to go about getting this. And I think I just use the poly group as a selection so that I can just select all that and delete it, and then dynamesh to close all those holes from there. Then I'll use my smooth brush and clean that up a bit. But this is not the piece that I'm going to use for the breast. You can see actually that I still have the subtool for the breast. I still have that as a separate piece. But what I am doing here, what I am working on, is helping to soften the transition from subtool to subtool. And this is a technique that I use for a lot of different things, but breast is just one instance of that. So I'm able to dynamesh them together, and you can see that the transition now is happening a little strangely. You got like that little nub up top, so I just move it in. But I'm able to smooth this out, and you can just kind of see the effects of what that looks like. It helps to clean that up. In this case, it's not I probably should have waited to do it till later. I'll probably have to do it again because I'll make a bunch of changes to the body or the breasts or arms or whatever, and I'll have to continue to work on it, but that's totally okay, so we can always do that again later. But it's a good idea to show it off now so you guys can kind of see it and understand it, and then we can do some more stuff with it later. Using that clay tubes brush and just my smooth brush very lightly here, just trying to kind of build up the form of the transitions between the deltoid and the tricep in the back here and the bicep in the front. Obviously, this is with the style that we're going with, we're not going to want some huge bulky girl. It's very common to see as a beginner mistake that people overmodel muscles quite a bit. A lot of time you'll see, hey, this is one of my first works, can you help me critique the muscle structure? And the muscles they're there, you have the right idea a lot of the time, but it's just what's called overmodeled, overdone. It's kind of like the second step above, and no offense, like the second step above a cave drawing. You start in art with like this representative art, and then you kind of take it a little bit of a step further where it's the representation of what you know about that muscle and that anatomy. The problem there is that it's not just muscles. Those muscles have a bunch of connecting points, right? Like insertion points into bones and that sort of thing. And they pull certain ways or push or twist and do all sorts of actions. But along with those muscles, there's also fat and skin and all these other things that kind of add to these forms, so that when the first few times we're kind of trying to attempt this, it just turns out super overmodeled, super overdone, and that's just, that's okay. That's a beginner mistake. That's not a big deal. And hopefully watching me here, you can kind of see how I try to handle these forms in a subtle manner. And obviously this isn't an anatomically correct figure that we're building here, but at least you can get the idea of how, I guess, lightness is the key, subtlety is the key. So we'll pick this up in the next episode, where I will create a shirt for this character, just a really quick tank top. You can see how I do that using the extract feature in ZBrush. If you know how to use it, awesome, but I'll probably talk about some other new techniques that you haven't heard of, hopefully. Some cool stuff with Z-Remesher, just to get some cool simple forms and keeping your polygroups all in the same place. I'll show it all to you in the next one, and I'll see you guys over there. Thanks for watching.